So welcome to Scrapbook Live. It's Friday, March 14th. It's Pi Day for those in the US. I found out that Pi Day isn't celebrated around the world because the US, we're the only ones for the most part that put our month day then year. So that's where you need it to be 3/14. But anyway, hopefully you'll have a chance to have some pie. If you have a chance, in comment, share your favorite pie, type of pie you like. We'll just get a little informal poll there and see what people are saying. But I have 8 layouts we're going to be putting together. These are quick, easy layouts. The handout that I put together is a compilation of different layout sketches and cut guides that Creative Memories put together in 2023 and 24 as kind of a way for advisors to share quick, simple layouts with beginning scrapbookers. However, these designs really are great foundations if you're a seasoned scrapbooker when you just need to get quick, easy layouts done. We all have that situation. We're just trying to get through an event. We're trying to make a book for a gift for somebody. So there's lots of different reasons that we just kind of need quick, easy layouts. So this is great. They are adaptable. They are able to be expanded upon in the sense of you can add all sorts of different final details to them to get them going. So what I've got going today is I kind of did a power layout for some of my photos. I grabbed different photos and said, what paper do I have that would go with this? And then I grabbed a single sheet of designer paper and then I said, okay, well, what paper is going to go? Like what background paper do I need to use? Cardstock? Do I want to use tonal designer paper? So those are kind of the things I'll talk about as I'm walking through each one of these layouts. And we'll talk about ways a little bit. I won't be finishing each layout. I'm going to mostly be building the backgrounds. I will show you the pictures that inspired my photo choices when I have them. Not every one of them has them. So just to make sure you kind of know what we're getting into here, it's really about getting these layouts put together. And then I may follow up with some additional videos on how I finish each one of the layouts that I had photos for, just so you can see kind of how things can progress from the quick, easy. You know, it can be all done once you get your photos on, or you can add additional details to it, just like we did with the 7 papers, 7 layouts video series. All right. I'm going to switch over here to my overhead camera and we will get started. I do see Tia's asking where the handouts are, always on my blog. So you can go to megganjacks.com. You'll go to Facebook Live and it's the first one that's listed there right now. If you're on YouTube watching this later, there'll be a link in the description below. And if you are on Facebook right now and you scroll up, I think the very first post or my post on there should have the link to it. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to switch to my overhead. And here we go. So one of the things I wanted to mention here is we've got the one and done layout handout here. As I mentioned, these are the sketches and the cut guides out of the Creative Memories beginning scrapbooking handouts that they created in 23 and 24. So what I did is I just made them all, I put them all together, all 8 of them onto a 3-page handout, just making it quick, easy, so you can see what the sketch looked like and what the cut guide looks like. One of the things I mentioned in here is these are great layouts if you want to turn them into 8x8 sketches. Now, I've got a handout for that. If you go to my March 13th of 2024, or you search for, there's actually a link to it in the one and done blog post. There's a link that will take you to March 13th of 2024, where I give you a handout about resizing sketches. And one of the things you'll see in there is a conversion chart that will allow you to convert 12 by 12 down to 8 by 8, 7 by 7, or 6 by 6. So if you are curious as to how to do this, I've got a handout for it, and you'll want to refer to that video. You'll want to refer to the handout, but these measurements are great to do quick, easy 8x8s if you are looking for additional quick recipe formulas to be able to do their quick layout formulas. All right, so one and done. We are going to start out with layout number 1. That's the one we're going to do. You can see here's the cut guide. We've got some easy things to do. I used my 12 by 12 FileMate to kind of get things sorted for myself. And here's the papers I'm going to be using for layout number 1. My designer paper is from the Welcoming Wood Box collection, And it's just, as you can see here, kind of a tealish greenish, like a dark tealish green with some pretty flowers. I am using navy as my base layer. Navy goes really well with that entire series of papers from the Welcoming Wood blocks. And there is a little bit, there's a hint of navy in here. There's not a lot, just a hint, but I thought navy is like the universal neutral. If you want a little bit of color, but not anything too distracting, navy is a good spot. So as we go through this layout, we're going to look over here to the cutting guide. And the first thing we're going to have to think about is we're going to have to think about direction of our paper. Now, I've gone easy on my very first one. There's no direction to this paper. It is a non-directional paper, which is going to work great. If you have a pen or a pencil with you, which is great to have, we will note that every one of these pieces, the top edge is going to be here at the top of our paper. So if you have a directional paper, when you're making your first cut, the first cut we're going to do is going to be 3 inches down. We're going to go 3 inches this direction. I want the top edge of my paper to be here. So if you have a pen or a pencil, and I'm just going to grab, I'll do it in a marker here so you guys can see. I'm going to write here, it's the top of my paper. When I make my first cut, my top edge needs to be up there because all of these pieces go on just like you see here. They all go on in the horizontal, I guess, fashion. So that's the top edge of my paper. So I'm going to cut at 3 inches. My first cut is going to be 3 inches. Taking this narrow piece, the 3-inch piece, I'm going to rotate it to the side and I'm going to cut it at 3 inches at the top. Then I need a 6-inch piece, cut it at 6 inches, and then I'll be left with a 3-inch piece at the bottom. You can kind of start to flip the pieces over and kind of see how things are going to start to shape up. This larger piece that's left, this 9-inch wide segment, I'm going to rotate to the side. I'm going to cut it at 3 inches at the top. Come out here to 6 inches. And I will cut. So there's all my pieces. We have just cut everything that we need to cut. Now it comes down to assembly. That's how quick and easy these things are together. So I do see a quick question from Kristen about having issues with sound. You might need to pop out of the live and come back in. Don't worry, it will pop you right back in if you're having some issues there. So my navy, here's my background. Now here's where you kind of can play around a little bit with things, figure out what's going to work best for your photos. I will tell you, I think these layouts, I don't want to say they're difficult to put together ahead of time, but sometimes it's easier just to leave them as like your paper pairings, and then you can come back to your photos and figure out when you have your photos like how you want everything. So let's take a peek though, how this is going to go. I'm not sure if I want to do my lighter colors at the top. I kind of lean that direction. I could reverse them on each side, but you can play around. It looks like, so I'm going to have 8 inches of photos right here. In this sketch, we can see we have 8 inches of photos here. Now, one of the things I want you to keep in mind, they recommend 4 photos here, 4 4x6s, but what you're going to end up with is a large area of your page that you can adjust as needed. So you can add your photos in here however you want. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these. These are not meant to be set in stone. They're great starting points. You will customize it based on your what you need for your photos. But if I do need to put 8 inches of photos here, that means my edge here is going to be at 8 inches from the right. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and put my pieces down. And I could play around a little bit. If I wasn't sure if I wanted to have the light at the bottom, I could go here. So this is where you kind of just play around with it a little bit and see what you think, but I'm pretty certain I'm going to go with the darker in the middle. We know that some of Creative Memories papers have a bigger contrast, I guess you would say, between one side and the other. This is one that has a pretty big difference where you have a darker tonal. The other side is higher contrast with that white base and then some prints on top of that. So that can be, it can make it, a lot of difference between the two sides. That on there, and then I'll come over here and put this, and these pieces all, oops, I'm going to try to mess that up and put them on the wrong side. Just using my fingernail to pull that adhesive off. I put the adhesive on the wrong side. And it comes down here at the bottom. And it's flush with the inside edge. And depending on your needs here, you would have some options to be able to add in some border stickers or other border elements. You could add in, try to get this straight on here. Here we go. Oh, see, I'm doing it again. I should have flipped things over. We'll try using the multi-purpose tool this time to pull the adhesive off. If you guys want to know why I use repo adhesive a lot, this is the exact reason. Because I put it on the wrong piece. All right, so we're almost done with layout number 1 in terms of getting the background done, and that's how quickly it comes together. So we have two papers here. If you need to, you can always rotate your papers. So there's different ways that you can play around with it a little bit to make it work for you. So don't be hesitant if you need to rotate things to get them to work better for your overall setup, right? Okay. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this and you need to find flexibility in your layout. So something's just not quite working right. Go ahead and rotate things and see what catches your eye and how you can get your photos to work. All right, so let's layout number 1. I would consider in here coming in, this paper has a kind of a little bit of that lovely gold color in it. I might come in with some dark gold or dark, more of a mustard yellow with maybe some accent there, or consider that for the mattes. It really just depends. I will admit, most of these layouts do not use mats. That would probably be one area if I was going to add to it that I would always keep in mind that I can always add mats. I've either got mats as part of my decorative collections or I can add cardstock in here. So when you're kind of laying this out and thinking, how am I going to get photos to work on here, especially when I've got a higher contrast designer print up here, a statement print, I will probably need to use mats in order to make sure that my photos still pop off the page and don't get lost in the design where I've got the high contrast statement print. All right, so layout number 1, all set. Layout number 2. Now I've got photos for this one. I don't think I'll put them on here, but I do want to show you guys kind of how when I was putting this, getting everything kind of figured out. What I did is I've got some Halloween photos, and these are old photos from like 2009 or 10 or something like that. So they're old. And I knew it. I came across, I was working like, I'll do the Halloween photos. And I was like, well, I liked this dotted paper. It was kind of fun. The other side is a tonal. So I've got kind of a more of a statement thing going on here, high contrast, but I've got a tonal on the other side. And these are both out of the Happy Hauntings, Shades of the Season Happy Haunting. The other thing I have that I tossed in here, because imagine I'm kind of doing like a power layout here. I've got my photos, I'm picking out a designer paper that goes with my photos, and I'm picking out backgrounds. So whether it be a cardstock, I've used a tonal paper here. And then what I would toss in there is think, oh, well, I have some Halloween borders made. I really don't know if these are gonna work for sure with this, but I'm gonna add them into my cluster here. And that's when I'm really working on this layout, I'll consider that I can use these. If they don't work for the layout, no big deal. They just get tossed back into my Halloween stuff and they'll get used at another time. So for this layout, it's really easy. Again, it's super easy cuts. I'm pretty certain these were all designed by Noreen, and we know Noreen is like queen of the quick, easy designs. And so I just love them. They're just so great. We're gonna take our designer paper here. And again, I do not have a directional print. Now, when you're looking at this one, this particular layout gets a little harder because we have papers that are gonna be going two different directions. All right, so you have this piece here, piece A remains vertical on your layout. But pieces B and C, well, B especially, they get rotated. C is a square, so it doesn't matter, but B gets rotated. So the top of B is actually the side here. So this is a mix orientation paper. You will want to make sure that when you're cutting it, you have to keep that in mind. If one side of your paper is directional, you need to know where you want that directional print to go so that you have your paper turned to the correct direction. If you want to, you could write on here, you could say, I would maybe write in here mix, which tells me that I need to use that the paper, that the overall design, when I cut this paper, it's a mixed directional cut. So I'm gonna go ahead, my paper is non-directional, so I don't care that it's mixed direction. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this first piece at 5 inches. 5 inches. This next piece, I'm gonna rotate it and I'm gonna cut it at 5 inches. Now, if you flip your paper over here and you're able to find your direction, this would be the top edge of your paper. But otherwise, I would recommend doing this layout with a non-directional paper. There's the pieces. Now, putting this together, again, so you see how simple these go. We have our background pieces. This piece is going to be flipped to this right in the middle. Now, here's the thing to think about. I don't know if I want my the dots to be the centerpiece right there, or if I want the dots to be the piece over here. So we're going to take a peek at it, and I'm going to toss my photos on here because this would be one where if I was taking a little more time today and not trying to get through all 8 of the layouts, I would go ahead and add my photos. I have photos to put on here, but we can see this is how this goes. Separate those a little bit so you can see the 2 pages. This is the left page and this is the right page. Now my photos, I still need to do a little bit of cropping on them because I need to get some of these down to a square, but I've got just kind of, my photos are a little crazy. I was not trying my hardest and I didn't have, you ever do that where you're doing a thing and you don't put your kids in like the best clothes ever? And so they're like wearing like their raggedy play clothes while we're doing something. Well, we were carving pumpkins, so I guess it should be raggedy play clothes. And I think I needed to do like something like this. And one of these photos is going to be cut down to a square. I think this one I was going to cut to a square. And then I do have, this photo is going to go to a square. That's how it's going to be. I need to chop those down to a square. But here's where I'm just kind of trying to get a vibe. I think I will add some mattes to this. I will probably come in with an accent color. I love purple. I love, especially if I decide I want to bring in, I love purple with Halloween. I could come in, if I really wanted to, I could come in on the side over here and I could add my border on this side. I could also come in and add a border over here. I could play around with it a little bit. You work to see whatever works best with you for what you want to do. But in general, this is how it's going to go. And so what I want to think about though is I'm going to just quickly flip, because I think I want my polka dots to be, because imagine I am going to mat my photos. I think I want a little bit more of that polka dot, the white balancing out on each side. And I'll pop a little bit of color on the piece here. So I'm gonna trim this one really quick. Yeah, so I think I like that best. And then I will have another layout that goes over on this side. And I have some other embellishment details that I can work with to put in there. I have room for some journaling. So lots of things, lots of ways to finish out the layout. I have plenty of room to add the borders, to do whatever I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go with the polka dots here. So let me adhere these into place. And these are all just, you just use your trimmer. Now, if you wanted to take this kind of to the next level, you could use a border punch. Like I could have come up here at the top and the bottom and I could have punched the bats if I wanted to. So think about that. If you're, ready to take this to the next step and you're wanting to add a little bit more to what are, pretty basic layouts, you can find ways to add your tools, to work in your tools. Add some mats, your embellishments, and so forth. Now here I do want to come in, this is overall 7 inches tall, so I need to be 3.5 inches from the bottom, 3.5 inches from the top, so centered. I'm going to grab my T-square and bring it up at 3.5 inches, and that's going to tell me where the bottom of that 5x7 mat is. And then over on this page, I need to put this piece at 3.5 inches. But since it's right along this, I can use the ruler. It's not out in the middle of my page. I'll be able to use the ruler to do that. Yes, the border is the Halloween border. I have one of the border series. I'll link it in the, when I go back and update the blog post, I will add the, I said it was 3.5 from the bottom, but it's only 2.5. Just so you know, I misspoke. These are 2.5 inches from the bottom, not 3.5. So here we go. All set to go. I've got my photos to do. So in this particular case, I'm still going to take my photos. I'm going to put them here. I'm going to put my borders. I'm still not sure on those. And I will go ahead and put this all in however you want to sort and store your layouts that you're still working on. All right, layout number 3. I don't know that I do have photos of this, and I'm going to be using retro vibes for this. And this, I've had a lot of people ask me, like, what am I going to use retro vibes for? Because they're just sure they got this in the secret box. Like, what am I going to use it for? I'm going to use it for my cat. Just so you know, anything that has that little bit of an orange color to it is perfect for Miss Kitty, because she's got the orange in there, and how fun of these is she? So Wendy's asking, where can she find the layouts? And the layouts are, let me see, I don't know. There we go. I can post. I have it linked. There we go. I added it to the comments. You should be able to get the one and done layouts, the handout on my blog. And I've adapted, these are from Creative Memories. So I don't want to take full credit. All I did was put the handout together and then show you guys here how to put them all together. This one was kind of fun. I wasn't sure. I love the bold colors. We're going to come in here with a little bit of orange as well. And then, so when I was looking at how I wanted to put this together, I do a lot of paper, like just the quick roll of the paper to see both sides next to each other. And then I came in and grabbed a photo and said, oh, that looks pretty fantastic. So that's how I decided to use this one. I do want to, my stripes, my wavy stripes are on the diagonal here, which is great because it doesn't matter which way I cut this. I'll still get all those nice colors in it. The back side, I do have a direction to my print. I've got flowers here, right? I got tops and bottoms to my flowers. Now, thankfully, in this particular case, everything here is gets put on the paper exactly how it's oriented here in the cut guide. These pieces go on horizontal. This is a square. And then this 5x7 piece stays vertical. So I'm gonna come in here with my marker or my pen and I'm gonna write on here that this is the top of my paper. So if you do have a directional print, you can make that work. And I'm lucky that I have a diagonal on the back side, so no matter which way I rotate this, I know I will get all of those pretty colors. But when I go ahead and cut this with my trimmer, I am going to cut it with the pattern side that has the direction to it. I'm going to have that side up so that I can keep track of where that top edge is. Now my top edge is right here, but I'm going to rotate before I make the 2.5 inch cuts. So I need to make 2.5 inch cuts. So these are going to be flipped over and they'll be my top banners or my top strips that go across both pages. This piece here, I'm going to rotate and I'm going to cut it at 5 inches. That'll leave me with a 5-inch piece and a 7x7 square. So 5x7 and a 7x7. 7 and 5 are kind of like this magical combination in scrapbooking. At least I think so. You get a nice 5x5 square, which holds a 5x7, which can hold the 4.5x6 mats. You just get, it's a lot of flexibility there. I have too many pieces of cardstock. So this one doesn't give us a specific measurements. It looks like, okay, so we have 2.5, 7.5. If we want it to be centered top to bottom, we're gonna come down maybe 1.25 inches from the top. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, we're gonna come down 1.25 inches from the top. So if you have a pencil and you wanna make a note on here, the distance from here, the top down to this first line is 1.25 inches. If you like to note that, if you want to have it spaced evenly. Now you could bring it all the way up, you could bring it all the way down, you could put it wherever works best for you, but that's going to be where it sits. And kind of how my photos will go on here, you'll see they'll kind of come in like this. Oh, she's so cute. I need to take some more photos of her because she doesn't have enough photos. So one thing I don't have a lot of vertical photos. The 2 vertical photos I have are like pretty much both the exact same. So I need to go plop her back in the same position on the cat tree and then make her make more faces and stuff. So I will be adding more photos to this. I just need to take some more or look back through my phone and see if there's some additional ones that I didn't print. But you can kind of see here why I chose those colors. She's got the orange in her coat. I do have a lot of blue tones to the living room and to the bedroom where she was. So I see a question about asking what printer I print with at home. I use the Epson PM400. And that's I find that it does the best job printing. I used to have a Canon Selfie and I just wasn't getting the skin tones the right color, and I'm not 100% sure why I was struggling so much with that. So I changed out and got the Epson PM400 and I really like it. It does a nice job. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to come down 1.25 inches from the top. My paper is a little long. My cardstock is a little wider than the 12 inches. Creative Memories says there's about like a 16th or so inch leeway they have with the manufacturer. Making sure here that I get my flowers going the right direction. Since it's a square piece, make sure you've got the top where you want the top to be. I will admit, when it comes to the pet stuff, I pretty much anything that has a lot of the general things that Creative Memories has come out with, kind of like the general collections, I just love using for Kitty. I really need to take more photos of her, which is hard to believe that I don't have enough of her, but I don't know, maybe I need to take her on some adventures or something like that. I thought about getting a little stroller for her. My brother has one. I may borrow his. He's got a cat stroller. He's got like his precious little Ellie that he just spoils rotten. And I need to see if I can borrow his cat stroller and Kitty has a harness. She does wear her harness okay. She doesn't like complain too bad when I put it on her, but she's a little timid about going outside. Anything too crazy. My brother's cat, Ellie, loves going outside. She just loves it. And Kitty's a little more hesitant. So I thought, well, maybe I could borrow his stroller and put her in her harness so that, I can restrain her a little bit in the stroller so she doesn't just run off, and then take her for a walk around the neighborhood. Maybe she'd like that. And then I could, use, papers that would associate like a walk around the neighborhood. So the size, somebody's asking about the size of the photos that I can print with the Epson PM400, and it does up to 5 or 5.5 inches wide, and then pretty much like up to 18 inches long if you want to have a custom piece of paper. But it will default, it does 4x6s, 5x7s, 3.5x5s, and maybe a little bit smaller, all borderless. So it's pretty flexible. You can't do an 8x10. But you can do things like 5x7s, which is another reason that I wanted to go ahead with that. And you can use whatever paper you want, which is really nice. If you like glossy, you can pick glossy paper. If you want a matte paper, you can pick matte paper. So here we go. Here's the layout. It's all set to go. Got a little bit of that fun designer print up here at the top, coming in here with a little bit of tonals. And as I mentioned, blues, oranges, kind of the neutral colors in there is going to be pretty fantastic when I get those all together. And I will be able to come in and add some additional detail. Additional detail I might want to add, if I want to add those pet elements, I could come in. I still have room up here at the top. I've got 1.25 inches. I could put this whole thing in my border maker system, and I could punch paw prints, because it's a knockout style, all the way across the top here and the top here, or even the bottom. I could still add that detail and back it with like maybe canary cardstock. I could come in with maybe tangerine or pumpkin. So I have a lot of options to continue to add additional details in here if I want to. And never underestimate the power of just a small strip of paper. If you wanted to add a little bit of detail here, you could come in with just a small strip of paper, a great length sticker, any type of detail that you want to add if you just think it needs a little bit more. I see a question asking about the paper, and I use from Red River. I use Red River paper, printer paper, and it's the Ultra Pro Satin, 68 pounds. Marsha's asking if I intended the strip across to be the opposite. No, I'm good. I could have reversed it and they could be angling both the same direction. Or they'd be angling in this way, but I think it's okay. It's not leaning too far one way. I think it'll be fine. So I will go ahead and add these to my piles of layouts to be finished later, and I'll circle back to them. I'll try to get them as a video of some sort. All right, so now we're up to layout number 4. Layout number 4 is I just have paper. I don't have pictures for this, but I just have to highlight, because I don't know if Jenny's out there, but Jenny wanted me to show how we could use the dirt paper out of the birds and Blossoms collection. This is what we call the dirt paper. She ended up with a ton of those left over from the several packs of paper that she purchased. She just didn't have a need for the dirt paper, which I like the dirt paper. I'm a little, not sad that I'm using it right now. I think I still have a couple of sheets left, but it's a nice, I thought it was a nice tonal brown, has little flecks of darker things in there. So what could you use the dirt paper for? You could use it for any time you have dirt. You could, for ball, like sporting events. You could use it for gardening. You could use it for hike. I am using this green tonal paper out of Birds and Blossoms. The other side has this pretty flowers on it. So the brown is kind of a neutral, got those flecks of almost like ink splatter on them, which is kind of fun. And then I do have this pretty green with these beautiful orange and yellow flowers. So this is going to be layout number 4. And so when we cut this paper, looking at it again, analyzing the paper, the pieces that we're making, and how do they sit on your layout. And we're lucky this one is another one where everything, all the pieces that go on here all stay in this same orientation. So we will come across the top here. This is where you could say top, it's single directional. So if you have a piece of designer paper that you have a direction to it, if both of your patterns are going up, that the top edge for both sides is the same type, or it's the same direction, then you're going to be good to go. You just have to keep track of where the top is. So I have a non-directional paper, so it really doesn't matter for me. However, if you have a directional paper, your top edge is right here. But when we make our first cut, we need to rotate our paper to the side to keep that top edge so we can make that first cut. And one thing I am going to recommend here, whenever you have a cut guide and you have like a couple of 1-inch or smaller cuts, I would go ahead and make those cuts first, because it is by far easier to cut 1-inch strips off of a big piece of paper than it is to cut our big piece, moderate, medium piece, and then have 2 inches that we've got to cut that 2 inches in half. That's where you can possibly start to run into problems with cutting something a little wonky. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my 2 1-inch strip cuts first. All right. Again, I'm making sure the top edge of my paper here, it doesn't matter whether I cut from the bottom or the top for these strips. I am going to cut from this right side, and I'm going to cut it 1 inch. I have noticed my trimmer mat is getting a little wonky. My trimmer mat's starting to get a little rough. So I'm going to switch out my trimmer, my mat here. I always try to keep, so tip. There is a spot under here where you can keep an extra mat. And since I pulled one out, I will add another one to my next order and I'll tuck it back under. So by the time I get to the point I've got a rough cutting mat, I can go ahead and have my fresh one right there to change it. So 1 inches. Cut this, I need 2 strips that are 1 inches wide. So there's my first, and there's my second. Now I get a lot of questions asking me, Megan, do you go up to the line? Do you cover the line? Especially when the lines get to be a little bit thicker at the 1 inch mark. It doesn't matter too much, but you need to be consistent. So if you cut this 1 inch strip and you covered up that 1 inch line, cut the second one the same way. If you went up to the 1 inch piece, I want you to make sure that you do the same thing so they'll both be that same width. Okay, so there's our 2 small segments. The next piece that we're going to cut, we're going to go ahead and cut it at 3 inches. And then that should give us the sections that we need. All right, so I've got all of my strips cut. Now I need to cut each one of them. I need to cut 3 inches off each one of them. So I'll rotate. If I have a directional paper, this should be my top edge. And I'm going to cut at 3 inches. You could also cut off 9 inches. It just depends on how you view those numbers. Again, making sure you have your top edge. I'm going to cut 3 inches. And my 2 1-inch strips, I'm going to cut off 3 inches from each one of these. 3 inches. So Rita's asking, how do I know it's the mat and not the blade? How do I know that? Because Rita, I have been, well, it's not on here. You can't even see it anymore. I have been using the same blade since 2019. This is my original blade. Now, I don't like to get a really rough edge, so I have a tendency probably to cut this a little bit more than normal. And maybe if I would trim this out, I wouldn't, it's more often than not, it's going to be your mat. You really should not have to replace the blade that often. It's typically always going to be your mat. All right, so there's the pieces. All right, so putting them on here, again, I have a little bit of discretion on how I wanted to put these pieces in place. I kind of already know, but on the left side, I'm pretty certain I'm going to use the more tonal piece in the middle, because again, I have a pretty high contrast or high difference between one side and the other. I've got a tonal green on one side, and I've got a really pretty statement print on the back side. So I'm pretty certain I'm going to be using my statement print in the smaller pieces that are not as likely to impact my photos. You can see here on the left page how the 4x6 photos, they sit in the middle of this piece here. So this piece sits there, this comes like such, and then I will bring in small bits of that statement print again. So the statement print it's showing up, but it's not overwhelming. That's the biggest thing I think with some of the statement prints. When you are working with patterns that are pretty bold, pretty bright, high contrast, they're eye-catching, using them in smaller bits on your layout can be helpful. So what I've got here is I will have room to add in some photos. I can put the 2 photos here. This is probably going to turn into a picture of me taking Kitty outside, because here, look, see, she looks beautiful with those. Anytime I've got orange in here, I could always use, anytime there's orange in the layout, I could use for pictures of Kitty. You should get an orange cat. I'm just saying, it really works well with anytime you have orange in your photos or layouts. And then when I come over onto the other side, I will be able to, I can add some mats if I want to. So there's going to be some great options there. So putting this all together, I need to center top to bottom here. And it looks like, so this is supposed to be 7 inches, 8, 9. I'll be about 1.5 inches from the top, and the bottom should give me a nice centered element here. But you can always center the big piece first and then just add the other pieces top and bottom. So it's 7 inches. That means it's going to come up 2.5 from the top, 2.5 from the bottom. Jenny's on here, you guys. She's saying dirt. I told you, Jenny, I'm using dirt paper. And there's people on here saying they love the dirt paper. They love the dirt paper. Jenny's the one who has, I think she said she had 10 sheets of this. That she has quite a bit left. I just have 2. I've used 2 packs of this is out of the second pack of the Birds and Blossom paper. I do love the colors, the tonal patterns of the Birds and Blossom. I'm not so much of a birds and flowers person, but the greens, the blues, the orange, they had some beautiful tonals in there that were really nice. And so this next piece gets put in there. And getting this right page put together. And I love that you guys in the comments on this live like chime in with like the helpful hints for people. So those of you that are kind of assist me with answering questions, things like that, it's super helpful. I saw somebody commenting earlier, like, how do you like read comments and do what you're doing? Well, I definitely have made mistakes before. And sometimes I miss questions. So I apologize if you ask a question and I miss it. But right, like this particular thing, these are not too difficult of layouts. So I maybe try to just talk when I'm doing adhesive as compared to when I'm cutting. Let's see here. I need this to be centered top to bottom, which, here we go. There it is. There we go. All right. So here is the layout. And Amanda's got a good comment here. She is saying that the brown paper will work great with the NSD papers. Yes, and they will. The National Scrapbook Day papers are all about gardening. So if you are looking for some additional things to work with, if you have the Birds and Blossom paper, the dirt paper, you can go ahead and probably work those in as well. It'd be some great options there. But yeah, this is going to be a really nice layout. I think I will. I'll put this into my stash of layouts that I'm starting to create for Kitty that I think that I'm going to be adding things with, because I'll probably come back and use those with her. And it'll be a good reminder to me if I have the layout done ahead of time, I can just mentally think like, okay, I need to have a good variety of vertical photos and horizontal. That is the one thing in these layouts that I would probably highlight is that most of these layouts do use a combination of vertical and horizontal. So when you find yourself taking photos, definitely the biggest advice I can give to you when taking photos is to try to get a variety of vertical and horizontal to give yourself those options for printing and putting your layouts together. And then when you print your layouts, or print your photos, go ahead and if, depending on where you print and how expensive it is and how your budget is, print a vertical version of something and a horizontal version, and you can just, get rid of the one you don't want. Layout number 5. I think I have photos for this one. Yes, birthday photos from really long time ago. I think it was my 18-year-old's 5th birthday. And so the inspiration, I will tell you for the birthday photos, I am really, really trying to use party time as for all of our birthday layouts. I'm just going to have a whole album full of birthday layouts. And so I've got party time here, and my inspiration for all of this was the birthday cake. You guys might remember this. Where is it? Here it is. Bolt. Remember when that was a really popular movie? I don't know. My child watched Bolt like so much. I can't even tell you how often my kid watched. I don't even know if I've ever seen Bolt all the way through, but I've heard it because we listened to it in the car while driving. And of course I'm driving and I can only hear what the videos are playing. So Susan's asking where the dirt paper is the dirt paper's out of the Birds and Blossom collection it was last year's spring collection. So, all right, so I've got a directional paper here. That is a big thing right now. I've got a directional paper. And the upside to this is that for layout number 5, they show the pieces on here that how you'd want to cut your paper, where you'd already have it rotated to the side and you cut your 1-inch strip first, and then you would work your the middle pieces here. But the thing to note is the top edge of our paper needs to be on the side. All right, so we've been writing top up here to orient ourselves to the cutting guide. The top is actually over on they've already got it rotated. Because you can see here, we've got horizontal strips, but they're oriented vertically on these. So here we go. Top over here. Now, here's a little bit of interestingness because I've got this lovely paper here, right? It's got the candles on it. Now my candles, I don't know if my candles they're like more than 1 inches. So I'm gonna be a little bit of a rough situation trying to get these candles to work just perfectly. I'm just gonna have to hope for the best because I have a feeling I'm gonna run into situations where I may not necessarily like where the flames end up. They're not like a 1-inch orientation, so I'm just gonna hope for the best. I do want to cut off to the side here, so I'm going to cut 1-inch strips. And I don't think it matters too much which edge I start on. I'm just going to go ahead and cut. There's 1, 2, 3, and really, yeah, what's going to happen on this is I'm just going to have to just tell myself it's not about the fact that they're candles. It is about the fact that they are just fun colors. All right. This piece that is left is going to be 8 inches tall. I'm going to rotate it and cut it in half at 6 inches. If I was really sensitive to the situation with the candles, I could use this as my piece instead of, I could have it yellow at the top. I'll show you here. I'm using aqua as my base page, just some aqua cardstock, which when aqua retired, I maybe bought a lot of it because I like it. And I could kind of tell that Island Waters that they were replacing it with is a different color. I really don't consider it a substitution or a it's just different. And so I sent a message to Creative Memories begging them to bring back aqua. But I like it. So this is where we can play around with it a little bit. I could come out here and use the candle paper on the outside and come top and bottom using the strips of paper. So that would be an option. My photos, I'm gonna have to take this down to a square, but I've got pictures of getting ready to like blow out the candles and so forth, and opening gifts. That's kind of like the pictures I've got. They're not the best pictures. I was not feeling very energetic about being a photographer at that point. I could do this. Now let's take a quick flip and see. Pretty certain I envisioned it would be more like this. My strips are not perfect. The candles didn't cut exactly the way I imagined, but I think I'm going to do this. I think I like the yellow more as the background for the photos where the candles can just kind of be out here, providing color and interest without distracting from the photos themselves. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So let's go ahead and I am going to put the pieces in place. These big yellow rectangles will get centered on the outer edges. So make sure you have your background paper centered on your mat. Yeah, Kelly agrees with me. She says it should be yellow as the blocks with the candles being the strips. And I'm going to go ahead and they have the strips kind of centered here. I think I'm going to go ahead and bring them up a little bit closer. So I'm going to come in here at a 1/4 inch from the bottom of the piece there, which is about 2 1/4 inches, or excuse me, 1 3/4 inches. The top edge is at 1 3/4 inch from and that's just going to give it, I don't know, it feels like a little more like cohesive together. Well, another thing I want to point out with these layouts is, I focused on showing how to cut one piece of paper using both sides of that designer paper, but always keep in mind that you don't have to follow the cut guide. You've got the measurements. So if you said, I like this layout, but I don't like both sides of my paper, but you could go in and find, I've got 4 inches of paper that I could cut in 1 inch strips to make these pieces. All of these can be done with using scraps out of your stash. So that's something to keep in mind when you're putting this together is, you know, you don't necessarily have to use one piece of paper. The biggest thing you will do is just pay attention to the sizes so that you know what size of paper the strips, what size each of the components are. Like when you're working with sketches, you just need the sizes. Everything else can just kind of come together. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go into my scraps of party time, and I am going to sit there and see if I can find another strip of this that I can cut off of another piece of this, because that's going to drive me nuts. All of my other strips here kind of have the candle light in the middle of it, and I'm going to go see, eventually I will go see. So I'm just going to tack this into place. I just use a little bit of repo that I'll be able to pull it up and replace it if I'm able to find another strip of paper that works there. So this is all set to go. I will be able to come in, add my photos. I've got plenty of space here in this 8x6 block if I have a mat that I want to use. 8x6, you can put a 4.5 by 6.5 inch mat on there, put your vertical photo on there as such. They have showing lots of room to add a title and a journaling. So it's got all the areas to add your elements. And if you're not a person who likes to put your photos right next to each other, I know I've had some comments from people, they don't like to butt their photos right up next to each other. Instead of turning two 4x6s here, you could trim off 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch of each one of those photos and give yourself a little bit of a gap between. You have a little bit of that aqua pointing showing. So let me just show you real quick. Imagine these have been trimmed. I mean, I could come in here like this, give myself a space. You can leave yourself that breathing room around them if you need it. Yeah, so Iris is commenting about the imperfection of pictures and paper. I will admit, all in all, I understand, when you take photos, sometimes you get what you get, especially when you're working with really old photos and we don't get the instant feedback on some of the old photos, right? They're done. It is what it is. Or maybe in the moment, the photo wasn't the best. And you just kind of have to make it work. I will admit sometimes those layouts are ones that I procrastinate a little bit because I'm just not necessarily inspired by the photos. That's where layouts like this can really come into handy, where you just want to get them done. You want them to look nice, but it's not necessarily a layout that you're going to spend hours on. All right. So that's just, the photos we have are the photos we have. All right. Layout number 6. This one, I am coming back. Oh, I've got pictures of Cody playing lacrosse in the backyard. I can't even escape. He's practicing. So I've got a whole stack of photo of Cody practicing lacrosse in the backyard. Just me watching and just taking some pictures. So I actually thought about using the dirt paper here. This is from Modern Moments, this orange and green and blue and brown collection, which is like probably my all-time favorite paper pack. But when I got it, because you see here, there's the flecks are in there as well, the flecks of brown on here, which is a great way to add some texture to the paper. However, it was a little too much when I then had that texture in the dirt paper. So I decided to go with medium craft cardstock, which is probably my new favorite cardstock that we have. It's a wonderful, just slightly darker than beige. It's still available. I don't know if Creative Memories is going to keep this around or what, but it is just a little bit darker than beige. So here you can see this is beige. This is medium craft. It's lovely. So definitely grab a pack or 2 of it if you are really looking for those neutrals. It was also included it was first introduced in the Retro Vibes secret box. They had it in there, and then they brought it back as part of this recent kind of a cardstock buffet thing. All right, so what I've got here is Cody wearing an orange shirt, green grass, brown fence. We do have some blue sky. So that's why I was looking at these papers and I was like, oh, I've got all those colors together. I've got way more photos than I'm going to include here, but I wanted to share with you what was the inspiration, why I decided I wanted to pull those particular colors. Because he's wearing an orange t-shirt. There's a blue sky. The grass is, well, not very green. There's palm trees. So I've got all the same colors. Now it's a matter of just getting all of the kind of the elements to work. Now, one thing that I want to point out here, I think on the original sketch to this, or the original, when they showed it with actual papers, they used a piece of designer paper here as the background to this page. And then they kind of came in with a decorative square in the middle. And then maybe this piece over here was a piece of cardstock that then had papers on it, or this stuff on it. So one of the things to keep in mind when you're putting your layouts together is, even though I'm usually using the same piece on the right and the left page, you can mix and match. If you want to bring in a little bit of a different color, you could do so. I am really, really protective, or super of, I say protective because I don't like using it. I love using it, but I don't want to use it in a way that is not efficient, of paper out of the Modern Moments paper pack. So I could have come over here with one of the designer papers out of that pack, used the medium craft on the other side. So just play around with it a little bit and you can kind of get a feel for what you like. But my designer paper here, again, I do not have a directional print. Well, there's a little bit of a direction to this one, but it doesn't matter which way it goes. So keep that in mind, though. I think everything here top is, because this piece A is the one that comes in very directional. So the top edge is going to be of your paper, is going to be up here. And when we rotate it, we'll rotate it to the side. Or excuse me, we cut it, we'll rotate it to the side. So I would imagine this is my top edge of my paper. I'm going to rotate to the side and I'm going to cut this at 4 inches. 4 inches. And then I will take this piece here and I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to go ahead and just cut off 4 inches here. I'm going to end up with an 8 by 8 square on this side. There's my 8 by 8 square. I'll rotate this 4 by 8 and cut it at 4 inches. So I've got 2 mats, a big square, and I've got that rectangle here. Now this strip comes over on this side. And here's where I have to make a little bit of a decision. It's actually at the bottom, though it doesn't really matter. I need to think about how I want my photos to exist. Do I want to use this flashy designer paper, right? Because I love it. I like the colors. I love the hexagons. I've got other ways to add hexagons. I got a punch that I could use and bring in more of the hexagon look if I want. But the challenge I run into is, you can see here when I start to add some of my photos, is one, you start to cover up quite a bit of it. And two, my papers start to get kind of lost in there. So it's a little bit, does the hexagon paper turn into kind of an accent? I don't know. I kind of like the hexagon though. I mean, I feel like this is just blue paper. Like, I need to see the hexagon. So probably what I will end up doing here is I will come in with some mats and I will add the mats in there to pop it off the page a little bit more. If I decide I want to come in with a lot of navy or blue, what I might end up actually doing is using the hexagon side for everything and matting my photos. Bringing in, so letting the hexagon, letting all the colors of this kind of pop through. Play around with it a little bit and see. These are 4 by 4, so I would need to crop my photos just a little bit smaller than the 4 by 4. They take them down to 3.5 by 3.5 for the squares. So different ways that I can kind of play around with it a little bit. I will be honest, I'm not going to tape anything down on this until I'm ready to actually work with my photos. I need to crop my photos. I need to decide what I'm going to use for my, if I'm going to mat things. This is where having the cardstock ring works out really well. I can go back to my modern moments. I know there's some tonal orange and some of the tonal, it's like minty green in there. It's not like green. I don't want to make it dark with anything. And Kelly green is not quite the right green to go with the modern moments. I could do navy. I might have, yeah, the blue is very, very close to peacock. It's not quite the perfect match for that. It might actually be closer to Victoria blue. Do you guys remember Victoria blue? That was, oh my gosh, such a beautiful color. And I don't even know if I have any Victoria blue left. And so I have to see, but I'll play around with that a little bit and work on that. And I've got a lot of space here left over that I can, figure out, do I want to come in with some other elements? So you will always get to the point where you're kind of like, okay, this layout needs a little bit more. And that's where you can then start to add to it if you want to. Jenny and Tia both, like, you jinxed each other. Hot fudge, definitely. I can bring in some hot fudge as well. So that actually might be something that I would do, where if I've got plenty of space here, I could actually I could actually put hot fudge behind everything here if I wanted to, if I really felt that I needed, or come in with some strips to make it stand out a little bit more. So I'll play with that a little bit, but all in all, that's kind of what it looks like. And you just figure out how you like it. All right. So now it's time for layout number 7. Layout number 7 for me was probably, I will admit, maybe not my favorite layout, or not my favorite design. And I think the reason that I was struggling with it a little bit, well, is because of it doesn't, if you put it together using both sides of the paper, it doesn't feel very balanced. Because if you look at layout number 7, we have, imagine you do one side of the paper over here on the right or the left, and then you do the opposite side of the paper both over here on the right, then you're not balanced between your two pieces unless you use the reverse piece over here. I don't know. We're going to play with this a little bit. And I probably picked an interesting piece to try to work with out of Christmas Charm. It's the ornaments paper. And I like the ornaments paper. And do you guys ever have those papers where you love the paper, you love the pattern, but by golly, it's big and bold and it makes a statement. And how do you work with layout or designs that use this statement? And if you don't cut this right, you only get little bits of the ornament. They're kind of spread apart. I feel like they either needed to be bigger, there needs to be like less space between them so that you don't have to use huge swaths of it to get the ornaments in the design. That's why we're going to be using 2-inch strips, which I think will work out fine. But if you use a 1-inch strip, you're not as likely to get enough of the ornament to get the full ornament vibe out of the paper. All right, so we're going to cut it. We're going to cut it just as they show, and then we will adapt from there. Now, this one you're going to cut. I have a directional paper. Obviously, I don't want my ornaments going the wrong direction. So on your handout, let me pull this paper up. On your handout, your top edge is right here. All these pieces go onto your paper horizontal. So here's top. So here's the top edge of our paper. Top edge of my paper, but I've got to rotate it to cut it. So I'm going to rotate it. My top edge is now on my side, and I'll cut this at 2 inches. And as you can see here, see, I mean, even at 2 inches, I don't think I have like one set of full ornaments in there. So that's something to keep in mind when you're working with your prints and how small of a piece you can cut from it is, are you getting enough of the paper to, hold on just a quick second. Um, you can cut top to bottom or to be able to get the full thing here. So you get a picture of the full ornament. And here again, you can see I do get more full ornaments in there. Now this big piece of paper, I do get all of the ornaments, right? The challenge I run into is that it's a pretty busy print. Trying to use this to put some photos on is going to be, you're gonna have to map the photos for sure. If I were to come over on my left side and put the print there and imagine like this, to me, it just feels a little out of off balance. All right, then the flip side would be is I could switch this over and you could have both. I mean, that's a solid design. I mean, this works. And I actually think with the particular paper that Creative Memories designed this for was the Homebound or the Homebody collection, which remember had that really pretty, it was like almost like a rug where it had the top and the bottom borders of that middle. And that's what they did. They cut off the top here and the top and the bottom, and they moved them over to this side. So on that sketch, this is really what you're going for, is you're using the same side of the paper. And in fact, they actually, they do tell us that. I mean, they don't show us using reverse anything here. It's all the same side of the paper. But what if you want to have it? You want to use the other side. How do you do this? Well, what we can do is we can come in here, we can use our ornaments. My recommendation here is to come over, and I was going to actually cut off a 2-inch segment on the side over here. 2 to 3 inches. Actually, let's go more like 4. We're gonna be bold. Nope, 3. Now here, if I wanted to, this isn't the best paper for it simply because I've got such a bold pattern on here. I could come in and I could cut off like a 1/4 inch strip. Just use that opposite side. I could use similar color cardstock. This paper, this particular designer paper I picked is a little bit more challenging just because it has such a big, bold pattern on it, but you can kind of see how this could work. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing those same colors over. So I've got a little bit of that dark green and I've got the ornaments over here. Now I still have space in here to be able to add in some additional things. I can come in with a mat, a 4.5 by 6-inch mat, and I can still put those 3.5 by 5.5-inch photos. So keeping in mind that flexibility, keeping in mind that if you're working with 2 sides of the paper, you can just make some additional cuts here and there, flip a piece over, and you're really pulling those elements together, keeping them balanced on both sides. So if you find yourself in that situation where you look at it and it just feels a little out of balance, it's just think, if I just make a little bit of a trim here, if I go ahead and trim a 1/4 inch off, I can flip it over, expose the other side. I need more of that color. That's all a very flexible option for you there. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere these photos or adhere these pieces in place. I want these to be I want them to be centered top to bottom. So this piece is 8 inches. I'm going to come down 2 inches from the top, 2 inches and come up 2 inches from the bottom. The white that I'm using is out of the top loading top loading pages. I think this is the before they switched it over to bright white. If you guys like the top loading pages, they use bright white in there as the kind of stabilizing cards paper. So the same bright white cardstock that we have, that is now included in the top loading page set. So for every set of top loading pages you order, you are going to get a set of bright white cardstock. So if you order top loading pages, you might not ever need to order bright white cardstock. These just go on as such. Then we have one more layout to put together to show you guys. And I think what do I have, like 4 I can easily circle back to eventually, not now, to actually show you how the layouts go together. I have most of our Christmas pictures printed. I just haven't figured out whether I'm going to start with fresh layouts or I'm going to use layouts from the Christmas Charm Page Makers class that Tessa and I did together. I'm usually always looking for photos to do fresh new content with, and so sometimes circling back to layouts I've already put together. It's a little hard for me to do because I like, oh, I've got photos I need to scrap. Oh, I need to make a layout for Power Hour. Oh, I need a layout for this. Let me use these. All right. So there is the layout number 7. Okay, layout number 8. Layout number 8, and there's the extra piece of, I knew I had. This is again out of retro vibes. And again, I'm gonna make a layout here that I am going to use for my cat, especially at some point. I think it'll just be the probably more than likely what it's going to be a layout used for. So this layout here, you can see here we have the right page has 2 bands using both sides of the paper, and then we carry over that one of the colors onto the left page. Again, we're going to be a little out of balance. We are going to have one pattern on this side that is not going to be on our left side. So it'll be another opportunity, just like we made some additional cuts in the paper, we will have that option to do that in there so that we can keep that balance if we want to. So I have a directional pattern to my paper. And one of the things we need to note is this is a mixed direction cut guide, meaning these narrow strips go on our paper in a horizontal fashion. This piece right here stays vertical. So I've got to keep that in mind when I do this, because what's going to happen is if I want to have all these pretty colors showing across the band of my paper here, then what's going to happen is they will actually be going a different direction on the opposite piece of paper, the opposite side over here. They'd be going horizontal instead of vertical. So this is a mixed direction paper or cut guide. So depending on your layout, depending on your paper, you're going to have to keep that in mind. The reverse side is non-directional. It's all those paisleys just all over the page, so it really doesn't matter. This side does. So when I cut my paper, I'm going to cut with this side facing up so I can make sure I cut those strips, getting all of those pretty wave pieces in there. So I'm going to cut these. I need 4 1.5 inch strips. So I'm going to use the 1.5 inch on the right side, come out here to 1.5 and trim. And I'll do one more. Okay. So this isn't terrible going this direction. If I really wanted to be very bold with my selection, and I could go ahead and include this uh, bold piece over here, if I really wanted to make bold choices with my design. These are some retro vibes, had some very, very bold statement prints in them. So this could be my layout, or it could be the other direction, other way too. Got some big bold patterns here, because even this next one is pretty bold. I mean, the paisley, it's, even though it's tonal, it's still pretty bold patterns in there. You can definitely see it from the view of the camera. Okay, so now what do I do? What do I do with this side over here? I was thinking more that I was going to use the yellow over here, but now I don't have that pretty design over here. So what am I going to do? I've got 4 inches. No, I've got 6 inches. I've got 6 inches here. I am pretty certain what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and chop off 1.5 inches that will match this. I'm going to slice it at 1.5 inches. And then I can make the determination when I do this. I could come in like this, just giving myself that space. So I've got more of the yellow, which is going to house my photo a little bit better. I will probably still need to map my photo. I could come in here and give myself a little bit of spacing between these pieces if I wanted to. Just a quick second here. So some definite options here to work with. And again, I will probably wait to finish it until I have photos to work with, because I want to be able to see, like, do I, maybe this will be the best option. If I come in here with a nice chunky mat, like I could use hot fudge. I've got some beautiful browns in here. If I come with a nice hot fudge 1/4 inch mat or things like that, I could go ahead and I could include, I could have more of that bold print standing out. But I like the fact in this particular case, I've got both prints on both pages. The other option too, and Judy brings this up, is because you can always turn this 90 degrees. You could turn either one of them 90 degrees, especially when you're looking at this layout. Now, I ran into a situation where I had some photos. I had a lot of horizontal photos. So if I turn this 90 degrees, I have lots of space for horizontal photos, but I can still work in some vertical ones if I need to, especially over here. Maybe you've got just one vertical photo and you've got 6 horizontals. You've got space to work it out. And you have plenty of space too. You don't have to use the sizes that they suggest. You could come in here and do however you want with your layouts. You could do a bunch of 3x4s. You could do, a 4x6 in the middle, or 4x6 size-ish, put some squares. You kind of just make it work as best as you can for your layouts there. All right. So, yes, Maggie, she comments that she likes that I use the different papers for each layout, and that it is a great. That was very much intentional, largely because I wanted to be able to talk about different papers, and I wanted to talk about different patterns. I wanted to talk about different. This is great for different themes. When I did the 7 papers for 7 layouts. The thing with that is that cut guide, all the pieces work together. So you really, that type of a cut guide where you're cutting one piece of paper and that piece of paper gets spread across 3 different layouts, it matters that all of your papers can go together. So that's why it's great to work in a collection with something like 7 papers for 7 layouts. Now, one and done is really designed to be, each one can be completely different. They can all be from the same pack if you're working on a album that you need to get done and you're working with a particular collection. But if they don't, that's okay too. So when you're getting ready to power layout for an event you're going to, like a crop or something like that, and you want to just take some quick and easy things that are kind of no-brainers, these are easy enough. You just grab your photos. What works with my photos? Oh, this single sheet works great. Let me grab some cardstock that's going to go with it. You can get the base of your layout done, and then you can use a Post-it note to jot down things that you want to do maybe when you return home, whether if you don't always take all your tools with you. You could say, I want to punch the top edge of this with the Border Maker cartridge. I need to add a gold, whatever it may be, or you can toss in additional cardstock with that when you're doing the power layout. You've grabbed your designer paper, your 2 sheets of your base paper, toss in a sheet of whatever you think might work good for mats or that you want to punch, or some embellishments, some mats from the collection. That's really what it means to power layout, but you know you've got a design that's going to work and it's easy to put together because it's just one piece of paper that you're going to use the front and the back of. All right, so I appreciate you guys all hanging in there with me. We went the full hour and a half for this session, but hopefully there was some good takeaways for you. This evening or later this afternoon is the start of the Creative Memories virtual crop. So they're going to have 4 layouts that will debut on the the blog. There will be a printable handout. Make sure you get the handout there. And then of course, going to the virtual crop group, you will be able to see all of the wonderful layouts that everybody creates. And I think there's a promotion, a new products and a promotion start on Monday. So the Hats Off collection is coming for graduates. So if you have a college or a high school graduate, those are going to be a great collection for you to take a look at. And then there is a new promotion. It is a buy or a spend to get promotion, which means you spend so much money and you will get a free bundle. And those bundles are the Boat Life, which has a wonderful cruise ship punch and has other boating and type of there's a Fast to Fab inspired paper and a artsy add-on kit, which is the mats with the layered embellishments that you can put together. So there's Boat Life, and then there's Fair Life, which I'm very excited about. Fair Life. I am originally from Iowa. Somewhere I have pictures of taking my kids to the state fair. I want to take Cody back. He has not been to the state fair in Iowa, which is amazing. If you ever had a chance to go to the Iowa State Fair, is really fantastic. I've heard the Minnesota State Fair is also really good, and various states have great state fairs. Arizona's is a little not quite as wonderful. We did do some good ones in Washington State. So all right. Yeah, Tedra, you're right. She's mentioning that the one and dones are great when you only have a sheet or 2 left and you're not sure what to do with it. Or you've picked up a random piece of paper at a paper buffet. I love a good paper buffet. But sometimes I find myself, and this is a paper buffet, if you don't know, is Creative Memories Advisors. If you go to one of their events, they might have a paper buffet where they open up packs of paper and they kind of one by one, you can like grab the papers. And it's great when you pick up, oh my God, I love this paper. It's so beautiful. But now what do I do with it? Well, you're going to pair a couple pieces of cardstock with it and you're going to have a one and done layout. So, all right. So thank you. Oh, I love everybody chiming in there with their state fairs. Yes. Tedra says the Wisconsin State Fair is right up there too. The Midwest, they know how to state fair up real good. All that food, all those animals, and all the fun. So check out what's going on with Creative Memories. New products launch on Monday. You can load your cart in anticipation of getting ready for the promotion, the Fair Life and the Boat Life. And then the virtual crop starts. So those are the key things. I think I will be here next week. It is spring break for Cody. So I have to kind of figure out what our week's going to look like, whether I'll be back with Scrapbook Life next week, but I will definitely be back on the 28th. It's the end of the month, so it should be some borders that we'll put together, but we'll see. So next week, hang in there with me a little bit. We'll figure it out. And then definitely on the 28th, I'll be back with definitely a fresh episode. All right. Take care, everybody. I will see you all soon.